We are on the Isle of Man on a beautiful spring morning, not far from Douglas, but in this secluded spot where the St Adamn's Church, and we're on the trail of medieval Manx crosses. What a beautiful spot this is. We're surrounded by birdsong. The bluebells are out and the grass, it's just absolutely stunning. And a nice fresh little breeze. This is one of the most famous of all the Manx crosses. It's covered with intricate knotwork, but there aren't any figures or animals. But the experts think it was probably carved in the late 9th or early 10th century. And so by then the Norsemen would have arrived with their decorations. The lack of animal decorations implies that that was the preference of the carver or whoever commissioned him to carve this cross. The Manx crosses are works of art, written documents and religious artefacts, and have an extraordinary capacity to tell us about our ancestors, the people who created them. The Isle of Man is one of the most significant collections of carved medieval stone memorials found anywhere in the British Islands. There are more than 200, ranging from the simplest of grave markers to large and intricately decorated memorials. They were created during a pivotal period of the island's history, from its conversion to Christianity 1500 years ago, through the arrival of Norse settlers in the 10th century, and culminating in the reorganisation of the church along European lines in the 12th and 13th centuries. The simplest grave markers carved using basic tools, and the more elaborate memorials produced by professional sculptors for wealthy clients, all reflect the faith, aspirations and resources of the people who raised them. Some may even have been painted. As well as commemorating the dead for whom they were raised, many crosses depict figures of people, pagan gods, animals and mythical monsters, telling stories, supporting religious beliefs and expressing the mixed identity of the Manx people. Although widespread literacy was not common in medieval society, around a fifth of the crosses bear inscriptions. The alphabets, languages and names used teach us about the beliefs and origins of the people who made these crosses. They are our only documents from this period. We have moved from the parish of Lonan to the parish of Maughold, and another beautiful spot. Behind me is the highest place on the island, Snaefell, and we are accompanied by the sound of the sheep bleating as well as the birds singing. What we have here at Maughold is probably the earliest site of Christianity on the island, and it is a large churchyard in which there is a well and the remains of 4 monastic cells, and the largest collection of stones on the island. The carved stones that have come from various parts of the monastic site have been gathered together in a cross house. This is one of the largest crosses to have been found on the island, and it is difficult to see the figures on it, but they are representing, it is supposed, the Virgin and Child, a priest carrying a staff, and 3 birds, one of which is a cockerel, symbolising the resurrection. In our quest for Manx crosses, we've come north to the district of Bride or Breed and to the parish church of St Bridget. And we're accompanied by the sound of rooks and crows cawing away in the trees. There's a collection here of early Christian stone carvings from this parish. The tallest and the most intricate is the so-called Thor cross, dating probably from the late 10th century and found when the old church was demolished and this church put up in the 19th century. This is called the Thor's cross because on here the bearded figure of Thor is depicted in his strength belt and he's seen running to his fishing expedition. And then Odin is seen running with his famous spear and alongside one of his ravens. The cross slab is covered with decoration on both faces, intricate, if somewhat mixed use of interlacing patterns. Animal and human decorations occur. The hunting motif is here with the hart and hound hunting, scenes from Norse mythology, which clearly formed a potent element in the folklore of the Viking settlers here in the Isle of Man. Above the stones is a stained glassed window of the church's patron saint, St Bridget. She is always portrayed with a burning flame, and as a patron saint of dairymaids, a number of black cows are shown behind her on the green hills of Bride, and the oyster catcher, called St Bridget's bird locally because of its black and white habit, is shown below. Our last stop in the search for medieval Manx crosses is Kirk Michael, and yet again a very different church. And the sound of traffic today, not birds or sheep. This actual church was built in 1835, but there's been a church here since the first millennium, and that is where these ancient crosses, stones, come from. This is better known as the Dragon Cross, and it has been described as a most beautiful piece of work. The treatment of the head is exceptional, and it is thought by many to be one of the finest crosses on the island. On one of the faces, the shaft has a plait of 7, changing into more open, irregular plait-work with the spaces filled in with pellets. The other face has a plait of 3, interlacing with a ring at the centre. The creatures that are known as dragons alongside the shaft on both sides have the large pointed eyes that are in the Ringerike style of carving. The carving of Christ on this cross is a rarity on the Isle of Man. In the top corners are depictions of a cockerel and an angel. The cockerel could refer to the denial of Jesus by the Apostle Peter. This cross was once displayed on the churchyard wall. One side is elaborately carved, while the rear has only a long runic inscription, one of the most complete to be found on the island. So the 11th century inscription, written in long branch runes, has several names, 3 being Gaelic and 1 of Norse origin. So they mark the merging of the 2 cultures. And the runes read, Mallymakin raised this cross in memory of Malmuri, his foster father or mother, Dufgul's daughter, the wife whom Apsil owned, i.e. was married to. Better to leave a good foster than a bad son. Beneath the cross head on the right side is a seated figure playing a harp. This is unique for the Isle of Man and probably represents David, the Old Testament king and psalmist. Iolaf's cross, probably dating from 950 to 975 AD, is one of the tallest on the island. It's called Iolaf's cross because The runic inscription has been translated as Iolaf, son of Thorolf the Red, raised this cross in memory of Fritha, his mother. And there's lots of many carvings, and one interesting aspect is the number of birds that are featured. This is certainly the most unusual slab in the collection and marks the grave of an unknown person who died in 1699. But it's actually an example of recycling, and close examination of the edges of the slab reveals a considerably older runic inscription. The slab was originally the base of a much larger cross that stood the other way up. And the skull and crossbones was the piece that went into a socket stone holding the slab in place.